Okay, thank you, everybody. We will call the regional council meeting for April the 13th to order. Apologize that we started a little bit late. Our last meeting went a little bit late. So with the meal break, it took us a little bit extra time. So just like to start the meeting by recognizing that we're on the traditional territory of our friends, neighbors, and Treaty 8 partners of Fort Nelson First Nation, as well as the Prophet River First Nation. We recognize our treaty. We recognize the rights within that treaty. We also recognize the contribution and enduring presence of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually. It is being streamed and recorded. Are there any council additions to tonight's council meeting? Staff?
Yes, Mayor, the Bill 17 Code of Conduct Amendment Act.
Right, so the province has come out with an act, or is the act through, or is it? Oh, we'll talk about it anyway.
Yeah, it's
on the code of conduct, which is
it's new legislation that's coming into effect with new code of conduct. So we'd like
Right.
to speak to council about it, just given the process that we're going through
All right,
at
let's
this moment.
put that at 10.1. Code of Conduct Amendment Act. Are there any other additions? Okay, is there any public comment? Anybody who wishes to comment on tonight's agenda in the gallery? Online? No? Okay. Adoption of the new agenda is in order, please. Moved by Councillor Enoch, second by Deputy Mayor Gerwing. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. There are two sets of minutes there. The Regional Council meeting of March 23rd, 2026, the Committee of the Whole meeting of March 23rd, 2026 for adoption. Moved by Deputy Mayor Gerwing, second by Councillor Enoch. Thank you. Is there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor of adoption? Are there any opposed? That carries. Thank you. Any business arising from those minutes, council? Staff? Okay, we have a proclamation I'd like to read. This proclamation is for Drinking Water Week. So whereas human health is dependent upon an abundant supply of pure, clean drinking water, and whereas safety, quality, and abundance of water can only be safeguarded by sound environmental protection, appropriate treatment, and properly maintained distribution systems, and whereas we are all the stewards of water infrastructure which future generations depend on, and whereas each citizen of our community is called upon to help protect our source waters from pollution, to practice water conservation, and to get involved in local water issues. And whereas federal, provincial, and local governments, as well as concerned organizations, are cognizant and supportive of measures that promote safe, clean, and abundant water and responsible wastewater management. And whereas one such measure involves heightening public awareness of the value of our drinking water resources and encouraging the public to promote this awareness, therefore the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality hereby proclaims May the 3rd to 9th, 2026 as will be known as NRM Water Week. Signed by myself. I think our staff have some things planned for that week, so hopefully anybody who hears this will take advantage and learn a little bit about our water system. I am happy to present this proclamation to you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, that brings us to 8.1 reports, administration report 2326 major appliances recycling roundtable program update. The Director of Public Works. Floor is yours, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this program is a disposal and recycling for end-of-life residential major appliances. So anything that's ozone depleting, has ozone depleting in it, or freezers, air conditioners, ice dispensers, dishwashers, any really major appliance. So This program covers the cost of recycling those units. It eliminates the current tipping fee that we would charge residents at the landfill. Covers some administrative costs for any reporting obligations that we have with MAR. It just promotes responsible recycling and reduces illegal dumping risks. It's a pretty good program, and we're just really hoping to apply it at the landfill.
Good. No cost to us?
No cost to us. They cover the costs of the removal of the ozone and an administration fee for the reporting responsibility.
So a resident just needs to take their appliance there and we'll store them and they'll be stored in a separate area, obviously, until the ozone's removed from them, and then.
Yes, the process wouldn't change. Like,
Right.
it's currently what happens now is they get stored, the ozone gets removed, and then they get recycled through the local
Right.
steel recycling company. It's just at this time that this MAR would recoup us for our costs to do so.
So I've never taken a major appliance down there. Does the homeowner or the appliance owner pay for that?
Our bylaw is a $25 tip.
$25 right now. So this would eliminate that fee to the resident. Sounds like a good deal to me.
Yeah.
What are council's wishes?
I move the recommendation that council support the implementation of the Major Appliances Recycling Roundtable Program at the Northern Rockies Regional Landfill.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Roper. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Enox. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Is it possible, or can we look into having a bin up at Toad at the transfer station there on an annual basis so that they have the same opportunity? I know there'll be now a cost, but currently it came up at our EAC and in conversations with those residents, it's not everybody has the capacity to bring their appliances down here. And so I'm wondering if we can look at a possibility. It doesn't have to be there all of the time, but I don't know, maybe in the spring cleanup or whatever it is, if we had a bin there.
Yeah, I think it's a possibility for sure. We do have a steel bin that goes up there, but if we could probably designate a bin, especially for their spring cleanup, for them to dispose of their appliances. Yeah.
So can I make an amendment then to Councilor Roper's recommendation?
So Deputy Mayor has, if it's necessary, or is it just direction to staff to do that, or?
Oh, I would just like it to read and investigate options for up highway. Just so that it is recorded that we are going to look at having something available for our up highway residents.
So that amendment is acceptable. Do I have a seconder for that amendment?
Moved.
Okay. Yeah, second by Councilor Roper. So the amendment is, do you want to read the words again? Exactly. Add the words.
That council support the implementation of the Major Appliances Recycling Roundtable Program at the Northern Rockies Regional Landfill and investigate options for servicing up highway.
Okay. So the amendment is moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That carries. Is there any discussion on the amended motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the amended motion? Are there any opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know how many times I gotta throw away that chair. It just keeps on back. Keep moving around.
Well, it's slowly working its way to the door, so maybe this time it'll get out the door to the garbage. Yeah. All right, the next item on the agenda, 8.2, is the Administrative Report 2426, which is the Community Resiliency Investment Program. Staff, please.
Evening, Mayor and Council. So we're seeking to submit a application to the 2026 Community Resiliency Investment Fund. And as we spoke earlier during the CWRP presentation, the 6 prioritized areas that we're looking at are listed there. And The application deadline is a week this upcoming Friday. So the funding will be oversubscribed, so, which I'm sure everybody's heard, but the government has, provincial governments peeled back funding in the CRI, UBCM, so vegetation management is no longer available for funding. That's why it was important to align our application with the CWRP. And that's what we've done here.
Thank you. Is there any questions from council? What are your wishes? Councilor next.
Recommend that the application be submitted to the Union of British Columbia Municipalities Community Resilience Investment Program for an amount up to 200,000 to support fire smart activities, education and training throughout the NRRM.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Grimming? Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Are there any opposed? Carries. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Administrative Report number 2526, the 2026 Budget Consultation Summary. Staff, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the 2026 draft budget was shared on the website, socials to encourage resident feedback, but public participation was very low. Those who did engage stated overall satisfaction and that they want services maintained. We did various engagement methods, open house, farmers market display, online materials, and the survey was open from March 25th to April 7th. There was one person that attended the open house and 2 online survey responses. Though I can't speak to the farmers market participation, the summary board and one-pager handouts were available from March 25th to April 11th. The top feedback was priorities of infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, and public safety. High overall satisfaction with services, and they feel they get good value for taxes. Little appetite for cutting core services, and indicated clearer visual budget communications, and stating that social media and municipal website were the preferred outreach channels. So we will continue these outreach methods, improving plain language and visual materials, and attempt to refine engagement to boost participation in future.
Yeah, it seems like there needs to be a bit of controversy before the budget meetings are attended. I guess we can look at that, a couple of different ways. Either people just don't care enough, or they think we're doing a good job. And so I'll take the latter.
Donuts are more popular than budgets.
Donuts are more.
Yeah.
And how do you know that?
I was at the farmer's market for the 2 weeks, actually. I think those stands might still be there, in fact. Oh, you picked them up. Oh, goodness me. Last year, did you pick up last year's while you were at it? Good. Good. Very good graphics. Those had very good graphics for communicating with individuals. And so I know that most people go to the farmer's market to go shopping for groceries. But there were a few that anyone that I saw, we parked those really close to my table. And any that we saw, I would go and talk to them and go through some of the points of what the graphs and the layout of percentages of how taxation works and who pays what and where we're at as a level compared to history and so on. And it was really well received by the ones who were interested in it. I'm guessing I talked to about 10 different parties, whether it was an individual or 2 or 3 people together. So yeah, it was good.
Good. Any other comments? And we will just receive this for information. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to item 8.4, Administrative Report 2626, which is the 2026 draft budget follow-up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Evening.
During the budget process, we had various questions that were brought up during the meeting. And thought it would be a perfect opportunity to go over those questions and provide answers and provide follow-up for the items that we aren't able to answer at this point. In addition, we have received the 2026 revised assessment. So I'm able to give an update on that as well. And we've identified some items that we would like to add to the proposed budget that will be presented to council on the 20th of April. So to begin with, what we had was at the beginning of the report in the background, we identified that there were some items that were already made, changes that were already made that were incorporated before the consultation. And the change in tax assessment, tax levy. Moving on to the questions that council had during the budget presentation, there was a request to include the unaudited actual costs within the reports at some level. So in reviewing that, we have operational, we call them green sheets in the budget, so operational departmental budgets. And it's quite an opportune spot to be able to put the actual information in. Now, there's no comparison. There's a column with the actual. We'll be bringing forward the budget to actual for 2025 at a subsequent council meeting, and the departments will be reporting. So attached to the report in the agenda is the sample of what those look like. So that we've covered that piece off. There was a question on the details of what made up the tourism operating budget. And so I'm providing a bit of a chart that identifies within it, we're supporting the service delivery at the VIC. We do the hiking and travel guides, various advertising and marketing, and the trade shows, along with some operating costs and our salaries. So if there's further questions or clarification, we can provide that. We were asked to work with the town square tenants in order to explore synergies for electrical redundancy. And I believe March 9th, there was information presented to council. And then the last piece that we're able to provide an update on is we were asked to determine if there are provisions within the CF Corp's letters of incorporation to determine how and at what levels dividends are distributed to shareholders. So what we know at this point is that on an annual basis, available net cash flow is identified by the shareholders. And if they are in a positive cash flow, they then determine, based on any amounts they need to hold back, that those funds will be distributed. To date, there is an accumulated net loss to the end of 2024. So we haven't seen that distribution, but that is the process when we finally get there. And the information that we'll be including in our 2025 financial statements is they showed a profit for 2025. And following that, we want to identify that we've got a list of presentations and reports that will be coming forward to council on the fire rescue response, highway rescue services, the sustainable service delivery. I think we've already got some meeting requests going out for that. A report on the individual projects undertaken under the phased renewal for town hall. Knowing that we're using that as a collective budget for various different projects. So we'll keep council informed as we go along. And a report on the Nonda Bridge. We do have the supplement that was provided at the council meeting. We'll be bringing forward a report on the Toad River Water Project. And as we go forward, if we have future reports on Miniker or other projects of a similar nature, be able to bring that information on those larger projects to council before we sit at a budget table. So those were the follow-ups from the budget meeting. The revised assessment, basically in a nutshell, a one-liner, the assessment from the completed to the revised really hasn't changed. There's a very small movement within the residential. And the information is there. And then we've got some items that, I'm sorry, any questions or we're good? Okay,
You have a
And-
question? No. Okay.
we're good.
I thought I saw Councilor Unick's hand starting to go up, so, but then she pulled it down very quickly.
She was probably yawning. And then just a heads up ahead of the budget meeting on the 20th, we need to recognize that we won't be able to recover all of our election costs from the school board. So we want to revise that revenue so it's reasonable. We missed a $5,000 materials and supply line for our Fire Smart program. We've got just the expense side, the mosquito control, we missed the 5-year cycle on the pest management plan. So, and some janitorial costs for the new space that Public Works has taken over with their move.
Deputy Mayor has a question.
Back to the election cost recovery.
Yes.
Why can't we get back all of our costs? Like, why the reduction?
So historically, we have requested 50%, 1/3.
Yeah, 1/3.
Yeah, 1/3 of the election costs be reimbursed by the school board. The school district, actually within their legislation, it
Mhm.
sets out that it's only for cost incremental to their portion that we would not normally undertake. So in in riding that fine line, as they were confirming the costs that they would cover this year, it is not 1/3 of the budget.
Thanks.
And then we've got some projects that have been added, the outfitting of the EOC trailer, our fleet. We're looking for a replacement of the van and another vehicle. We've got changes to the plow truck, Public Works plow truck, where we had recognized at the budget meetings that the 200,000 wasn't appropriate. So we're making that change. We will have a project this year for the town hall roof remediation upstairs. At this point, we don't have a budget for it, so we're not including the project. We will report at the budget meeting that information will come forward and it will be funded out of the building reserves. We also recognize that while the ceiling tiles were down upstairs, that it was a perfect opportunity to deal with some of the HVAC inconsistencies. So we've added $75,000 to the phased renewal piece so that we can take care of those issues while we're under construction, I guess. We've got some changes for the common header filter project. So it's a design and construction, and based on the information that came in just late last week, the costs relating to that need to move up based on what the design came out at. And we also have 2 projects that we had grant approval from council to go forward to seek grant funding, the age-friendly communities, and the development of the applications procedure. So though all of those things are going to be included in the draft that we see on the 20th, we're also going to be recognizing, based on positive tendering opportunities, that we will have a reduction in the budgets for the Riverwell to Booster Station, Birch Drive, and the roads renewal. So based on the pre-approvals that council did for the projects last meeting, we took a look at how those savings in terms of what we were tendering affected the budget, so that we're not approving to draw as much down from the reserves to cover it. The projects don't need to be as large because the tenders came in at a good spot. And I think I'm out of breath, and that's the end of my report.
Well, thank you. Are there any questions that haven't already been asked? I have one, and that is the report on the Common Health Header Filter Project and the reason that the design went from 552,000 to $1 million. I mean, it's almost doubled. So is there a report out there that talks about why the increase is there?
Our fellow left. We will have that information for you at the budget meeting.
Okay, thank you. It's a pretty significant, there's no impact on the taxation, but it's a significant draw from the reserves, so.
It is. We know that at least 148,000 of that relates to the additional material costs. And the balance of that difference relates to the design and tender piece.
Okay.
And we also know that this is a project that's been on the books for a few years to get the design. And the prices have been increasing, but we will.
Yeah, if you can bring a
confirm
report
that.
forward on that, it was good. And, with respect to the addition of the actuals, I think that will help.
Okay.
We can't hold it to to today or yesterday's cost, but certainly, as close as you can make it. And then year over year, if we're keeping these, you have the ability then to sort of see year over year as a council person interested in the budget. So I think that'll be a good addition. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Thank you very much for your time. Excuse me. I felt that tickle coming on. Okay, that brings us to 8.5 bylaw report 238C of 25, the site-specific zoning amendment, bulk fuel for 4401 55th Street for decision. Now, I just want to comment before staff that I had hoped that we could get the entire council here to have this discussion, because I think it's important that we hear from everybody. But unfortunately, we've got one councillor missing tonight. But I just feel it's important that we move forward with this. We've been hanging on to it for a long time, so I think it's time for us to make some kind of a decision with respect to this, so that the proponents understand what our perspective is, and the community can find out. So with that, I'll turn it over to staff, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening again, Mayor and councillors. So before you is the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality Zoning Amendment Bylaw 4401 55th Street Site-Specific Bulk Fuel for your consideration of third reading and adoption. The draft bylaw is included as attachment 1. The report in the background section summarizes the reports that have been provided to council previously. While the analysis section summarizes the information that was obtained primarily in those admin reports, as well as through public engagement. There's a section in the analysis section that talks about the public notification and the results of the public hearing that was held previously, as well as the outcome of the referral to the Ministry of Transportation, which was a requirement of Section 52 of the Transportation Act. Finally, the report outlines some options for council's consideration regarding third reading and adoption of the bylaw. And with that, I'll turn it over to council.
Thank you for the report. Thank you for all the work that you've done. There's been a considerable amount of information that's been provided to council from both questions that we've had and questions that have come from the public. So I certainly appreciate the volume of information and the work that all of staff have done to bring this forward. So I guess it's time to move forward with third reading. If there's anybody who would like to put third reading on the floor.
Yeah, I'll put the third reading on the floor.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Gerwing that we consider third reading. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Yax? Okay, thank you. So third reading is on the floor for discussion. So anybody has any comments with respect to this? Go ahead, Councilor Roper.
I also appreciate all the work that staff put into this, and I really appreciate the concerns raised by the public, particularly around proximity and safety. And I have those concerns as well. And they're valid and important. I also appreciate the views of the residents who took the time to let us know that they support the proposal and that they see value in a productive redevelopment. And when you have such strong views on both sides, it makes these decisions more difficult. And I don't think this is an easy decision for any of us. So the council's job is not only to prevent risk, we're also here to ensure that land and infrastructure in the municipality remains productive. After reviewing the information we received throughout the process, I've learned many things. I've learned that the increased traffic will more than likely not exceed more than 1 or 2 additional trucks per week. I've learned that the Ministry of Transportation and Transit has no issues with the proposal. I've learned that the Fort Nelson Fire Department has adequate training, equipment, and water supply, and hazardous materials response capability to manage an incident at the site. We also have a recommendation from the fire department to limit the fuel storage to 200,000 liters, which is the same limit as its current use right now. So I think the biggest change would just be operational. And to me, the risk is no longer safety related. It's the biggest risk is setting a precedent. But given that the parcel has a long history of fuel related use, in my view, allowing a site specific bulk fuel use supports the productive reuse of an existing serviced industrial property and avoids leaving another lot in our community dormant and deteriorating. So I support this as a unique redevelopment of an existing fuel site, not as a general policy shift for M1 lands. So I think voting yes tonight isn't going to introduce a fundamentally new land use. I think voting yes will permit a modernized version of what the land has already been historically supporting. And this will put an underutilized parcel back into productive economic use without actually having to expand our industrial footprint. So it's more taxes and a few more jobs. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who has any comments? Well, I have a few then. And I agree with some of the comments that Councilor Roper has made. I think there's many pros and cons. It's been a learning experience. It's been a searching experience, I think, probably for all of us with respect to, how we'd like to see the community progress, how we'd like to see additions to the business community, how we'd like to see economic development thrive in the community. And certainly some of the pros are around economic development. The potential for a few new jobs, the potential for a tax-paying business to continue to prosper and have the ability to pay, a new business that's open, a variety of businesses, and a potential change in some of the uses of that property, price competition. There are a lot of pros that, allowing this facility to move on is something else that I've thought about, and that, you know, I talk to the people that I associate with. There are also some cons, you know, some potential long-term negatives. And I've thought about those as well. I agree from the safety perspective that most of will be looked after. The volume, you know, I talked to some of the bulk plant operators about, you know, what does it take for a bulk plant operation? How many liters of fuel need to flow through in a year, right? Which starts to tell you about how many times they've got to fuel it up, how many trucks need to come, you know, and certainly a few trucks a day would look after that. And I don't think that would negatively impact, you know, the safety of the route or the intersections that are involved there, you know, with you know, 10 to 15 million liters of fuel cycling through that property in a year. So that was taken care of for me. With respect to fires, you're absolutely right. Our fire department has said that they have the means and the ability to look after any sort of a problem that might happen on that site. So that took care of that concern that I had originally. But then when I found out that there's no provincial body to regulate fuel bulk plants in the province, the only legislation that really applies is the Fire Safety Act. So then looking at the long term was another question that I had for some of the bulk plant operators is who does look after the provincial requirement for facility integrity and long-term inspections? And the answer I got from the operating is that there is no provincial entity that looks after that the petroleum companies, you know, the big multinational corporations, they rely on in-house procedures that are developed from the API specs, which is a North American wide body that the American Petroleum Institute. So completely voluntary that over time they do these inspections according to the API spec to make sure that their facilities over the long term have integrity. And they do that because they're multinational corporations that don't want to see a big fire at one of their bulk plants. And so they make sure that but the potential buyers of this, though they haven't come forward, if they were a multinational corporation, they'd be fully involved in this process if they were planning on buying it. So, you know, it's not a multinational that has a corporate image and all the liability that comes with being a large corporation, to ensure that those integrity inspections year over year are looked after. And then, you know, if it is sold to a small operator who then has trouble, then that small operator may indeed sell it to somebody else. And though we might know who the local is who is potentially, you know, intending on investing in this, and we may trust that particular person, we've got to look out for the community in the long term. And, you know, if this site were to change hands multiple times, I'm concerned that the inspection process would continue voluntarily, which means then that we as a municipality would have to pick up the inspection requirements through our fire department and or through a bylaw enforcement officer to ensure that the long-term integrity inspections are being done adequately over the long term. And then the second part of the inspection process is whether or not, you know, if there was a limit, if we were as a municipality were to put a limit on the volumes that could be held on site, there's the capacity on site at 1.8 million liters. And so, you know, unless the tanks were removed, we would have to have further inspections to ensure that the 1.8 million, or sorry, if 1.6 million, that's over and above the 200,000, we'd have to have, you know, continual inspections to ensure that increased volumes over the 200,000 were being brought into the site. So there's a further inspection requirement. And, you know, we've asked for a couple of different legal interpretations and legal opinions with respect to that, how much property, how much liability the municipality would have if there was, you know, a fire and we went against what our fire department advises, which is the 200,000 liters on the site. If we fail in making sure that that's what kept there, then potentially we're liable operationally for any damages that might occur to a third party in the event that there's a fire there, because we may be deemed to be negligent in the way we do those inspections. And so do we want to set up a long-term bureaucracy to make sure that inspections are being done both from an integrity perspective as well as from a volume perspective on the site? And so I worry about that. And yeah, and whether or not we incur sort of that long-term liability in the event that there was an incident, even if the fire department did their best to be able to put it out. Second point, with respect to cons that I thought of, is the integrity of our zoning process. So, you know, zoning processes are put in place to ensure that the municipality has the ability to manage the land that we want to make productive. And how is that productive land being used within the municipality? That whole zoning process goes through a public engagement process. That's been done, you know, here, and that particular site has been reviewed by multiple councils over the years with respect to this, and all of them had determined that that's not what they would like to see. So, you know, to build something without the zoning and then not operate it without the zoning, and then just hope that some future council, whether it's years down the line or generations down the line, will go ahead and approve that, sets us up for a situation where people can just build things and just hope to get them zoned. And the pressure gets put on future councils because there's been this heck of an investment that's been put in, even though it was against the particular zoning of the day. So this investment gets done, and then, you know, the business eventually comes and looks for permission, you know, to rezone so that they can operate this investment that they've put in. That puts pressure on the you know, future councils. And so even though the times are tough in this community, even though there's some positive attributes to, you know, the economic development and the potential for jobs, the fact that the integrity of the zoning system is lost has got to be taken into consideration. The second part of that is the fact that, you know, it really opens the door for anybody else down there to apply for the same thing. And how can you say no to others that might come there? Which brings me to the last point, which is the bulk plant operators who have appropriately zoned in the already zoned property where there is zoned property for this type of business. You know, there was a reason that the councils of the day chose to put bulk plants in that particular area. You know, I think one was probably safety of the community back in the day, although I wasn't here. I mean, I can remember when I was very young that one of the bulk plants, you know, was on the road back to Fort Nelson Gas, and, you know, it was right in town. I remember going there, picking up gas so that we went out on the river one time. But they were moved out of town, you know, probably for safety reasons. But secondary to that was the need for us to support the railroad. The need for us to make sure that the movements of products by rail were enhanced at the time. To move fuel into this community by rail gave another reason why the railroad was built in the first place. And today, probably some of the only train loads that are coming into this community are fuel for that. And for us to consider, rethinking that whole process of the support for the rail and the support for fuel coming in on the rail to these bulk plants at the rail yard, this facility, everything has to be done, but has to be trucked. So you're allowing that reason for rail to exist in a municipality. One of the reasons for rail to exist in the municipality is starting to slip, is starting to erode by allowing a bulk plant that's only supplied by trucks in the community. So I have thought about all of these things, and because it's a tough thing in a community that's in an economic slump to just turn down the opportunity for some more jobs and the productive use of every piece of property that we've got out there. But I just feel that the cons outweigh the pros, and for that reason, I'll be voting against adopting third reading of this for that reason. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Councillor Souls?
I don't really want to, no. I've always wondered about zoning, because when you think back into even the development of a place like Fort Nelson, the zoning came along afterwards. Zoning is like an accountant, never let them be in the front and always let them follow the entrepreneurs around and actually record what they're doing and make sense of what entrepreneurs do. I think that zoning is a lot like that. When I don't see zoning as the primary issue in this, even though if there was a simple way to pack up this plant and move it out to Gasoline Alley, I would definitely recommend that. That is just it's obvious why we call it Gasoline Alley, and why what you've outlined there is very, very true from a railway point of view, and from a local capacity point of view. I don't believe we need a bulk plant at all. Another one, there's lots of capacity room. There's room for more capacity. There's a lot of idle capacity on Gasoline Alley as it sits, and I get that. But I also look at infrastructure and things that are, and that plant is there and really is not going to change a whole lot. So to the first point you had made regarding the inspection, we have a mechanism that we were looking at earlier that is in our fire assessment perspective, in our fire mitigation, or our local fire setting up for fire work, for fire control, measuring control, so on. We don't actually know what is sitting in other backyards in people's tanks, do we? So we already, there are other industrial lots around Fort Nelson that have tanks set up all over in them, and no one's doing inspections on them either, and neither are we. And so assume there's a fire at one of those plants. Do we have, will we be liable for negligence if we, and so I think that condition exists around here. And so I don't think that has bothered us too much to this point. So I'm quite in favor of, well, I'll add one other thing, and that is that through the history when that plant was active and busy, for those days to come again. But when it was active and really busy, traffic was not an issue. The lineups at the pumps sometimes were. Trucks and hundreds of pickups and a lot of fuel that moved through there. And I don't think that that was a detriment to anything here at the time. And I lived there and I sourced fuel there myself in the logging, in the heydays of the logging. And I can't see adding this back into for giving this the opportunity. What is its opportunity? Its opportunity is to not disappear. And we're watching enough infrastructure disappear around Fort Nelson of other forms, and I don't like it. It's really difficult to get back anything once it's gone. Investment has been done. I realize that it won't necessarily, you can't say for sure that it'll stay in someone else's hands or in the original purchaser's hands. I get that. That's true. But the status quo that we have on infrastructure is not, when we watch it erode bit by bit, we contribute to that if we can't hold out an olive leaf to the ones that are even trying to do something that is real. It's just, so I intend to vote in favor of it.
Thank you, Councillor Souls. Is there anybody else who would like to comment?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Goring?
Yeah, I won't rehash. I mean, all three of you make very valid points and I agree with all of them. I'm basing my decision on, I believe that the zoning that we currently have in place makes sense. And has been that way, heavy across the bridge, light there. So to me, that makes sense. What worries me about spot zoning or rezoning a parcel is that future owners could consider alternative uses once it's rezoned, and council would have no ability to change that. And then my other major concern is that if this was to go through it, if the property was rezoned, there are other operators in the light industrial right now that plan to make application to rezone theirs as well. So for those reasons, I, and many others that you have already stated, that I will be voting no.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Sure.
So the applicant seeking a site-specific zoning amendment, so it wouldn't create an opportunity for a new owner to use it for anything other than what the current zoning allows, other than that bulk fuel. So we aren't changing this from an M1 to an M2, from a light industrial to heavy industrial, which would then allow for a significant range of other uses. This is site-specific. They would only be allowed to use it for light industrial, with the exception of that bulk fuel. That would be the only addition. So just to clarify that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yes, you may.
Okay, so then can you clarify for me in the report, under 0.7, economic and industrial development considerations, the bullet point states future owners could consider alternative uses on the site.
So it's just in regards to the amount and type, like the fuel. So if it's if we approve it as a bulk fuel, then they could only use it for bulk fuel, but they could use other uses that are currently permitted in the light industrial. So if the light industrial allows, it allows card lock and we allow bulk fuel, the site specific would allow bulk fuel in addition to anything else that's listed as light industrial.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Councillor, you next.
Yeah, this is a hard one that none of us really wanna take part in. Good points, all of you. I won't repeat the cons. Safety is a big thing. From what I've heard around, with people I've talked to and my feelings, the bulk plants don't need to be in town. It's just dangerous. Not too long ago, last summer, actually down in LA, one blew up. And, you can have the regulations and the inspections and all of that. But the operators of those sites are only as safe as those operators. And ultimately, in the end, if something happens, we could be liable.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like another opportunity to speak? Yeah, it's your opportunity was at the start of the meeting, Percy. So there's no opportunity to be involved in the debate with council at this time. Go ahead.
Would you be willing to accept a motion to allow him to speak
Yes,
that we could all vote on. So I
Yes,
would make, I would make that motion.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Counselor Souls? Is there any discussion? In favor? Carry. Okay, Percy? Can you set up so that, there's a mic there. Thanks, Percy.
So I want to thank everybody for the time and effort that's put into this. I understand all the challenges and everything, but the one thing I do want to clarify is the Ministry of Environment is the regulatory of the bulk plants. And the reason that they don't go out and see the big plants and the big corporate companies is because they have a process in place that the Ministry of Environment is happy with. And I don't know who told you that Ministry of Environment isn't responsible for it, but I've seen it not just at this facility, but I've seen it at other facilities like the Cardlock that I worked at in Vanderhoof. There was a bulk plant that's right in town too, which isn't an issue in Vanderhoof. But anyway, Ministry of Environment comes and does their annual inspections on them and goes through it and looks after all that. And as far as safety goes, it's probably realistically a Cardlock is considerably safer than what we got going on in town right now with all these companies having their own tanks in their yard and they're fueling up right at the source of fuel. So it's a bigger safety concern than having a Cardlock. The whole idea of a Cardlock system was to eliminate where they're fueling it, the source of the fuel from where they're fueling up. Because if there's a fire and you're fueling up right beside the source, like a tank in the yard, if there's probably a 90% chance of a fire happening is going to be when you're fueling up and you're going to be right at the source. So the whole idea of a Cardlock, just like a gas station, they move the tanks, put them underground or away from the possible chance of fires. So from a safety point of view, it has its pros and cons, but I think that's one thing you should maybe consider, that it's actually safer having a facility like that than it is for what's going on right now in town. But that's all I got to say.
Thanks. Thanks, Percy. Okay. We've had a full round of discussion. I've called it, if anybody had a secondary opportunity to speak.
Maybe just some clarification as to what exactly we're voting for right now.
So we're voting on third reading of a zoning amendment bylaw for this particular site.
With no limitations on fuel?
No limitation.
Okay. What is the process if we want to approve it with limitations on fuel?
Third reading would have to be approved and then it would have to go back through the whole entire process to change the fuel requirement. Third reading needs to be approved before that happens.
So we can, if it is approved, then there's still the opportunity to go back and limit the fuel and restart that process and have more public engagement.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. So with that, I will call the question on third reading. All those in favor? Opposed? So there are 3 of us opposed. The third reading fails. So thank you for all the work that everybody has put into this. Now that third reading has failed, there's really no reason to move forward. The process essentially stops at this point. So thank you for your input. Thank you for your honest input. Thank you for your work at reviewing, each of these requirements that are each of these pros and cons, I guess, that you've come up with, for talking to the people that you've spoken to in your circles, for speaking to any professionals that you've spoken to try to really, I think this has been probably one of the most difficult, time-consuming, and exercises I think that we've gone through as a council in 3.5 years. There's a lot riding on it. I certainly appreciate the proponent coming forward with it, but we've come to our decision, and I just want to thank everybody, including staff, for that. So with that, we will move on to the next order of business, which is correspondence. There's no correspondence there for discussion. There are 6 pieces of correspondence to receive for information. So is there anybody who would,
I move to accept them for information.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Seconder, Councillor Roper. All in favor to accept these for information? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. So that brings us to 10.1, which is new business. CIO has added the Code of Conduct Amendment Act as proposed by the province. So I'll turn it over to the CIO for
Thanks,
discussion.
Mayor. There's been some new legislation that's come in the pike. I'll let Deputy CAO McIver in her corporate services role explain it, but it's give a little more detail and just considering we're obviously in the process based on council direction to develop a council code of conduct, and there's been some significant additions that will come into play in the future here that we're most likely going to consider as part of this process here, but I'll pass it on to Jay.
Thanks. So some of you may be aware that after a number of resolutions passed through UBCM, a working group established between UBCM and the province, draft legislation was proposed on April 2nd and given first reading. So Bill 17 is the Codes of Conduct Amendment Act, and so it'll apply to a number of pieces of guiding legislation, including the Community Charter and Local Government Act, which essentially will require mandatory codes of conduct for all local governments in BC. So it's anticipated that it will receive royal assent before the end of the year. Some of the changes will be in effect upon adoption, and then some will be immediately effective following the local election in October. As with any piece of legislation, regulations will come, but essentially the amendments, so in addition to the requirement to have a code of conduct, compliance will become mandatory for all elected officials. And the province is also prescribing provisions within codes of conduct. So some of that includes processes for complaints, investigations, and then sanctions. So we spent a fair amount of time on the 9th reviewing a draft code of conduct, but the good part is that with these requirements, we'll ensure that the code that this council ultimately adopts is consistent with the legislation. So additionally, the provisions grant authorities to investigators of breaches to recommend sanctions. It speaks to where findings and reports can be considered either in closed meetings or presented in public. So that was something that this council had some discussion about. And then also, there's another bill that's maybe not quite as applicable, but perhaps to future councils around parental leave for local elected officials. So the new bill in that regard will also introduce an entitlement to 26 weeks. So next steps for us is just integrating your feedback from March, the March review of your code, as well as the implications of the Amendment Act, and then some additional information to questions that you raised. We sought some additional advice and we'll bring that back in a next iteration. So it's nice to have some, I think, prescribed direction. And it's quite a shift from having councils be required to consider a code to actually adopting one. So I think this council's been moving in the right direction, whether you realize it or not. So yeah, so more to come on that, but it will be in front of you in the next month or so for another review.
Yeah, I guess it's timely in the process that we're going, that our process is timely considering this. It is interesting that they didn't tell us what had to be in it, right? In its entirety. Like, they haven't said, here's a code of conduct that you must follow. You know, they're still leaving it up to the municipalities to come up with it on their, or the councils to come up with it on their own. And obviously then review it. It just, you have to have one is what they're telling us. So we still have the ability, you know, and future councils to look at that code of conduct, make sure you've got what the province says you have to have in it, but everything after that becomes, you're working it out as a team, as a group at the start, when you're all still friends before potentially it, you know, all hell breaks loose throughout the term of a council. So, yeah, so that's good. I'm looking forward to, you know, what our lawyers have said about ours and, you know, any other reviews that you've done, as our process moves forward. So, and I'm also interested in, you know, the very specifics of what the province is telling us that we have to have in it. So, yeah, good. Any other comments? Okay, thank you very much for that report. CEO Barry. Standing items. So are there any council reports? Councilor, you next, please.
Just something really quick, because you know me, I'm really proud. Congratulations to Streeper Kennels. This is the third time that they've secured the Triple Crown. They've won the Fur Rendezvous Open World Championship in Anchorage, the Fairbanks Open North American Championship, and just recently the Race of Champions up in Toke. So they hold 28 world championships to date.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Nice. Anybody else?
I was just at Kofi and I'll tell you about it next meeting.
Yeah, you just got back.
I got lots of notes. I hope I can read them.
Okay. Well, we'll be prepared for a long report then the next time around. And yeah, you know, some of the things that, because the chief and some of those folks were out there, the reserve were down there as well. And so they had some good things to say this morning about it. I mean, it was, you know, just what they had done, a couple things they had done, but generally I think they said that, you know, that it was fruitful, some of the things that they'd heard down there. Deputy Mayor Goering?
So March the 24th, I attended the Seniors Week Planning Meeting. Just a reminder, that's June 7th to the 13th, followed by our third Primary Care Stabilization Committee meeting, which is moving along really well. March the 31st, I participated in 2 more interviews for the CAO position, and then followed by the budget open house. April 1st, the hiring committee met to debrief following those 2 interviews. April the 2nd, I attended the send-off for Aaron and Rob. It was just so beautiful, sad, but really nice and very well attended. So yeah, well done everyone that organized that. The black balloons were the highlight for me. April 7th, did a one-on-one interview delving into their perspectives on primary care in the NRM. That's for the Primary Care Stabilization Committee, and then followed by our 4th Primary Care Stabilization Committee meeting that day. April 8th, I attended the 5th installment hosted by the BC Policy Solutions on the future of primary care. I've sent you all out the links. They're about an hour and a half. They are really, really well done. And this one was highlighting the leadership role that not-for-profit nurse-led team-based primary care organizations can play in creating a higher quality, more cost-effective primary care system in BC. It was really, really done and well done and really eye-opening. There are at least 2 clinics down south that are fully operated by nurse practitioners and associated staff. They do have an association with a doctor, but not on site. It's like a different setup completely. Yeah, so if you get a chance, like really take them in, they're very good. April the 9th, I attended the Chamber of Commerce Board meeting. They're in the process of hiring a new ED. Beam Credit Union is hosting a business networking event on May the 12th from 5 to 7. Mayor and council is invited to attend. And they did an update on the trade show, May 1st to the 3rd. They're not sure whether they're going to be able to have a kids zone this year due to staff and financial capacity issues. So yeah, that would be really sad. If anybody has any ideas how that could maybe continue to be offered. Check in with Bev. I'm sure she's open to any ideas. And then April 10th, I attended the CHP and then followed by a planning meeting for the next primary care stabilization meeting. Thanks.
Good, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so spent most of the last 2 weeks snuffling and trying to get over this cold, but on the 24th, we had a community fire smart resiliency committee meeting, which was postponed from the meeting that we were supposed to have in here when the roof collapsed on that Thursday. We talked about this fire school that we're going to talk about a little later up at Toad, and I had some discussion with respect to the community resiliency plan, as well as the water project. And so talked about those things. We talked about, that's pretty much it. Then off to Grand Prairie, I did some bond spilling in Grand Prairie. On the 30th, I met with the outfitter that's concerned about some of the Cascadeni proposals, and just wanted to bend my ear a little bit with respect to their concerns on that. We did more CAO interviews, and I'd like to report to council that process is moving along well. And I think we've got some candidates there. I think one or more of them are capable of doing the job well. We just need to really start getting into the real nitty gritty. If and when we decide to bring one or more of them to the community, staff and council will get an opportunity to meet them. I'd certainly like to see council take them and their spouse out for a dinner meeting where we can, a little bit informally get to know each of the candidates a little bit better. So, we're proceeding along that path well. I also attended Aaron and Rob's retirement afternoon, and I agree with everything Deputy Mayor Gerwing said. It was a wonderful send off, and of course they're not leaving the community, thank goodness. So, and I think that was it. It was on the 7th. I was supposed to go to Kofi, but just too under the weather to go, so canceled out of that. Canceled the flight and didn't go. And then this morning we met with Fort Nelson First Nation to talk about the quarterly report around the community forest and the opportunities for investment in the forest industry. I guess that's probably the best way to characterize that discussion. Yeah, and here we are at tonight's meeting. So that's everything I had to report. There's no business outstanding. Are there any notice of motions for the next? Seeing none. Then is there any public online that wish to speak? No? Okay. So we were going to move into a closed meeting, but we have a meeting going already, a special meeting to take care of that. So I think we can adjourn this meeting. Moved by Councillor Roper, second by Councillor Souls. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We are adjourned. Thank you.